Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Yud Ches Amar Aleph 18a at the very bottom of the page. The last four words. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Kara Seirugin Yatza. This that we had in the Mishnah, that if you read it, Seirugin was in intervals. So you read a bit, and then you take a break, and then you read some more. So you are Yotze, you still fulfill your obligation. Seirusin, top of the next page, it says Seirusin lo Yatza. But if you read it Sirus, then you're not Yotze. What's Sirus? Sirus is like cutting off, meaning you read it out of order. So you read some, and then and you sort of cut out a piece, and you move it here, and you move it there, so it's being read out of order. So similar to limafreya, which we had in the Mishnah, as the Rashi says, it means limafreya, out of order. So you are not Yotze. Okay. Rabbi Muna Omer Mishum Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Muna says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, Af Seirugin, even if you're reading in intervals, which we said you're Yotze, you fulfill your obligation, it's not always the case, because Im Shaha Kedei Ligmar Eskula Choser L'Rosh. If the delay was long enough, that it gave enough time to finish the whole Megillah, so then Choser L'Rosh, you have to go back to the beginning. So you can take breaks and still be Yotze, but the break can't be too long. If the break is long enough to read the whole Megillah, so you need to, or to finish the whole Megillah, you need to go back to the beginning. Amar Rav Yosef, halacha ki Rabbi Muna she'amar mishum Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is in accordance with Rabbi Muna in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Amar le Abaye Rav Yosef, Abaye said to Rav Yosef, you're saying the halacha is like him, but I need to understand this better. Kidei ligmar eskula mehecha dekai l'seifa. When you say that if you take a break for enough time to finish it off, do you mean from where you're up to? Oh, Dilma mereishal l'seifa, or maybe the amount of time it would take to read it from beginning to end. Let's say somebody's already up to the last chapter and they take a break. Well, the amount of time to finish it is very short. There's only a few verses in the last chapter. So if you wait 30 seconds, 1 minute, then you're not Yotze? Is that what it means? Or it means if you wait enough time to read the whole Megillah from beginning to end. Because the language he used, the way he said it, was enough time to finish it. Ligmar eskula. But what did he mean? That was the question that Abaye asked Rabbi Yosef. Amar le mereisha l'seifa. He said, Rabbi Yosef said, it means from the beginning to the end. Dim king, because otherwise nasata dvarecha l'shirah. Otherwise you're saying something that is very subjective. It's shira means measurements. It will be measured differently in every case, and in general, the halacha tries to avoid kind of these variables that it would be different in different instances. So to say, for the Chachamim to say you can't wait too long, and it's a specific amount of time, it's the amount of time it takes to read the whole Megillah. Now that might depend on the person a little bit, but that's more exact. While if it's how long it takes to read the rest of the Megillah from where you're up to, so that's always going to be changing, and that you can't really have a halacha that's so variable. Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rav. Rabbi Abba said the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba in the name of Rav. Halacha ki Rabbi Muna. The halacha is like Rabbi Muna. Again, that this is the halacha that if you wait too long from the amount of time to read the whole thing, then you are not Yotze. That is the halacha. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel said, Ein halacha ki Rabbi Muna. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda, or not like Rabbi Muna, and it doesn't matter how long you wait. Besura masnu hachi. That's how they taught this dispute in Surah, that it was Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba in the name of Rav who said the halacha is like Rabbi Muna, and it was Shmuel who said the halacha is not like Rabbi Muna. Bepumpadisa masnu hachi. And in Pumpadisa they taught it this way. Amar of Kahana Amar Rav halacha Rabbi Muna. They didn't have it from Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba in the name of Rav. They had it from Rabbi Kahana in the name of Rav, that the halacha is like Rabbi Muna. Ushmuel Amar ein halacha Rabbi Muna. But again, Shmuel said the halacha is not like Rabbi Muna, and it doesn't matter how long you wait, you can still be Yotze. Rav Bibi Masni Ekcha, but Rav Bibi had it the opposite. He taught the dispute the opposite. Rav Amar Ein Halacha Rabbi Muna. Rav's the one who says the halacha is not like Rabbi Muna, and it doesn't matter how long you break, you're still Yotzei. Shmuel Amar Halacha Rabbi Muna. And Shmuel is the one who says the halacha is in accordance with Rabbi Muna. Amar Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef says, Nakot de Rabbi Bibi Adcha. Take Rabbi's his tradition in your hands. That's the one that makes the most sense. Why? Because we find that Shmuel is concerned about the opinion of either an individual against the other sages. And so here it makes sense that Shmuel would say that halacha is like Rabbi Muna, even though Rabbi Muna was on his own. We don't have any record of anyone else saying the same thing. But it's Shmuel who is concerned for even the opinion of an individual, and therefore we should assume that Rabbi had the correct tradition, that it was Shmuel who said the halacha is like Rabbi Muna. Where do we see that Shmuel is concerned about the opinion even of an individual? Ditnan, because we learned in a Mishnah in Yevamos. The Mishnah says, Shomeres Yavam Shekidesh Achev Esachosa. If you have a Shomeres Yavam, so you have a man who dies without children, and his wife falls to Yibum, so one of the deceased brothers is going to have to either marry her and do Yibum or Chalitza, the process of deciding not to marry her. So let's say she's Shomeres Yavam, so she's waiting to find out what's her fate going to be. What is the brother going to do? But there's more than one brother in this case. And one of the brothers went and betrothed, gave kiddushin to this woman's sister. Now, a person's not allowed to marry their wife's sister. And even if you're not completely married yet to a woman, if you give her kiddushin already, you can't marry her sister anymore. What if there's no kiddushin yet, you're not married to her, but she's zakuk liyibum, which means she's potentially there to marry because she fell to yibum. So here, her husband died. It's one of this husband had numerous brothers, and one of those brothers is going to have to either marry or do chalitza, but there's some connection there, potentially. And that brother then goes and betroths this woman's sister. If he was married to this woman, he couldn't betroth her sister. But the question is, will that kiddushin work? So, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Amru, they said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Omrim lo, we say to this brother who gave her kiddushin, Hamtein ad sheyasa achicha agadol ma'isa. Wait, to marry her. He already gave her kiddushin, but wait to marry her until your older brother does something, either yibum or chalitza, and kind of detaches any connection between her and the other brothers. Right now, there's a potential connection to all the brothers, because any of them could be the one to do yibum, although the best is for the oldest brother. And therefore, if this wasn't the oldest brother who did this, we say to him, wait to marry her until the older brother does something. Now, and that implies that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira was concerned about the zika, about the connection here, because he said, don't marry her yet. Wait to marry her, because there is a connection over here. And the Chachamim say, the Rabbanan there argue, they're not mentioned here, but they argue, and they say, no, it's fine. They say, there's more than one brother, so there's no zika, there's no connection. One of them has to marry her, but the rest don't. So there's no specific connection, and he's allowed to marry her sister. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, though, was the one who was stringent and said that if one of the brothers betrothed this woman's sister, he should wait to marry her until this woman, this Shomeres Yavam, her case is being resolved by the older brother, either through Yibum or Chalitza. So, and Amar Shmuel, and about this Shmuel says, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, The halacha is in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, even though the Rabbanan argue. So you see that Shmuel is concerned even for the opinion of an individual, and at least when that individual is stringent. And so too here, it makes sense that he's the one who was concerned for the opinion of Rabbi Muna that if you read the Megillah in intervals, and the interval is too long, that you are not going to be Yotzei. Okay. Continues the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Hishmit bas sofer osios o psukin. Let's say you're reading the Megillah, and you realize that there's words missing. Or letters missing, or verses missing even. Vikara nakore kumaturgaman hamatargim. And the person reading, he knew them though, he knows the Megillah by heart, so he reads them just like somebody as if he was translating. Even though he doesn't have the words in front of him, he goes ahead and reads them. The halacha is yatsa. You're still yotzei. So even though there's missing words in the text of the Megillah, but if you still read them by heart, you're yotzei. Now you haven't read the whole Megillah by heart. You've just read a few words or verses. You're still yotzei. Ask the Gemara Meisve. We have a contradiction from a Brisa. The Brisa says, Hayu ba'osios mitushtashos o mikuros. If the Megillah had letters that were rubbed out or that were torn, im rishuma nikar kshira. If it's still clear what the letter is, so then it's still a kosher Megillah. Ve'im lav psula. But if not, then the Megillah is pasal. So 1 second. We just said that you can have words missing and it's still kosher. It's still good, the reading, as long as you just say it by heart. But then we have a Brisa that says if some of the words are rubbed out or torn, then you're not yotzei. Well, that can't be worse than that they're not even there. So how do we resolve this contradiction? Says the Gemara, lo kashya. It's not a contradiction. Ha bekula ha b'miktsasa. One of them is talking about the whole thing, and one of them is talking about part. The Brisa that says that if the letters are rubbed out or broken, and you can't read them, you're not yotzei, it means, or they're not clear what the letters are, it means the whole Megillah is like that. If the whole Megillah is like that, then you can't be yotzei with it. The Brisa that says if there's missing letters or verses, you could still be yotzei as long as you read them by heart. So that's talking about where it's just a few letters here and there, or a few verses, but it's not the whole thing. Okay. Tamar Rabban, the rabbis taught. Hishmit ba'kara pasuk echad. If the reader of the Megillah left out a verse, he skipped a verse. Lo yomar ekras kula v'achar kach ekros so pasuk. He shouldn't say, well, I'll finish it off, I'll read to the end, and then I'll fill in that pasuk. Ela korem oso pasuk vayilach. He should go back and read from that verse on. You have to read the Megillah in order. Can't read till the end and then read a verse that's back there. You have to go back to where you left, you missed a pasuk, and read from there, continue in order. That way everything's in order. You may have had stuff in between, but the beginning of the Megillah was read, and then only afterwards was the rest of the Megillah read. So it's technically in order, even though you might have things in between. If, let's say, you only realized that you skipped something a little later, so you read all those verses, but you go back and you read again from the verse that you skipped. Nichnas lebeis hakneses. Let's say somebody walks into shul, umatza tzibor shekaro chatzia, and he finds that they're already halfway through the Megillah reading. Lo yomar ekra chatzia imat tzibor v'achar kach ekra chatzia. He shouldn't say, I'll hear the second half from the congregation, and then I'll read the first half on my own. You have to read it from the beginning to the end. You have to read it in order. You can't read it out of order. Okay. Now the Mishnah said, Misnam neim yatsa. If a person was drifting off while they were hearing the Megillah, they're still yotzei. Ask the Gemara, Hechi dami misnam neim. What's the case of misnam neim? What does that mean, you're drifting off? So Amar Rav Ashi says, Nim v'lo nim. It means you're asleep, but you're not really asleep. Tir v'lo tir. You're awake, but you're not really awake. You're kind of in between. Dikaru levani. You're awake enough that if somebody says your name, you're going to respond. But you're not awake enough to respond with a kind of a logical, intelligent way. But if they remind you of what happened afterwards, then you'll remember, because you're awake enough to respond to your name and to remember what happened, but not really awake enough to really say something intelligent. That's misdamnim, and that person is still yotze. Hayakosva darsha umagia. The Mishnah said that if a person was writing or teaching or editing a Megillah, and he's reading it, im kivin libo yotza, if as long as he has kavana, he has intent to do the mitzvah, he'll be yotze Megillah. So echidami, what's the case where you're writing the Megillah you read it as you write? Ida kamisader psuka psuka, because of if what it means is you read out loud each pasuk, and then you write it in. Meaning before you write it, you read it. You declare the pasuk. You say Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, and then you write Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh. So then kikiven libo my habe. What does it help to have kavana for the mitzvah, to have intent for the mitzvah? Al pehu, you're really reading it by heart, because when you actually said the words, you hadn't written them yet. He's reading them, but he's saying them by heart. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, and then he writes again. So that means he read by heart. Ella, so rather dekasa psuka psuka v'karile. So it must be that you write the pasuk and then you read it. That's what it means to that if you're writing it, you could be yotze. It must be that you write by you write the pasuk, and after you write it in, you read it. So ask the Gemara, mi yatza? Are you going to be yotze there? Will you fulfill your obligation? They say in the name of Rav, halacha k'divrei Elmer kula. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion that you have to read the whole Megillah. And even according to the opinion that you don't have to read the whole thing, you can start from Ish Yehudi in chapter 2. You still need the whole thing to be written. Even our opinion agrees that the entire Megillah must be written. So even our opinion agrees that it has to. So you can't. The whole Megillah has to be written. You can't read a verse and or write a verse and then read that one, and then write another verse and read that one. That means you're not reading from a complete Megillah. So everybody agrees the Megillah has to be complete. So what's the case where you're reading as you're writing? So Ella de mancha Megillah kamei v'kari lamina psuka psuka v'kasavla. The case must be you have another Megillah in front of you, and you're reading verse by verse from that other Megillah and writing it in. But you're reading from a whole Megillah. So that's the case where we say you're yotze, as long as you have kavanah, as long as you have intent. Meaning it doesn't look like you're reading a Megillah right now, you're writing a Megillah. But as long as you have intent to fulfill the mitzvah, well, you read the Megillah and you have intent to fulfill the mitzvah. So even if you're reading a verse and then writing it in, you can still be yotze. Says the Gemara, Lema Masayeh Rabba Bar Bar Chana. This should suggest that this could be a proof to Rabba Bar Bar Chana. D'amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana Rabbi Yochanan, because he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Asr lichtov osacha shaloming aksav. It is forbidden to write even one letter without copying it. When you write a Sefer Torah or other holy works, so you need to copy it. You can't write it by heart. So this seems to be a proof for that, because the case of our Mishnah where it says you read it as you wrote it is where you're writing off of another Megillah. So we see that you're supposed to write using another Megillah. So this seems to be a proof to Rabbi Bar Bar Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that when you write something, you need to copy it from another source. Says the Gemara, no, Dilma de Isrami le Isramuye. No, maybe our Mishnah is just saying if you did that, if that's what happens. Not saying you have to. Maybe really you could write a Megillah by heart, but the Mishnah spoke about a case where you were copying it over and wanted to know what's the halacha then? Are you yotze? Are you not yotze? And that's why it spoke about that case. And we said as long as you have kavanah, you are yotze. But maybe really when you write a Megillah, you don't have to copy off of something. Okay. Says the Gemara, Gufa. Gufa means let's examine that statement itself. So Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana Rabbi Yochanan Asr Luchtovos Achash Shaloming Aksav. Rabbi Bar Chana said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, you're not allowed to write even a single letter without copying it off of a written work. Meisvei, we have a contradiction from a brisa. Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Reb Shimon ben Elazar said, Ma'aseh Rabbi Meir. There was a story involving Rabbi Meir. Shehalach le'aber shana ba'asya. He went to Asya to be ma'aber the shana, to declare a leap year. So that's where they were gathering to declare the leap year. So he went there, v'lo haya sham Megillah. Right, you do that in the month of Adar, and there was no Megillah there. V'kasva milibo v'kara, and he wrote it by heart, and then he read it. So he didn't have a Megillah, but you need to read from a Megillah. So he wrote it. He wrote a Megillah by heart, and then he read it. So you see, though, that you don't have to copy it. So that's a contradiction to the teaching of Rabbi Yochanan, that you are not allowed to write something without copying it off of something else. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yabo, Shani Rabbi Meir, Dimekayim Bey, Vafapayach Yashir Negdacha. Now Rabbi Meir was different. Rabbi Meir could write it by heart, because he knew it so well. Because we could say about him the verse, and your eyelids will be straight opposite you. What does that mean? Or straight, will look straight ahead. Amar le Rami bar Chama Rabbi Yirmiyah midifti Rabbi Chama Rami bar Chama said to Rabbi Yirmiyah midifti Mai v'afapayach yashir negdecha. What does the verse mean that your it's a verse in Mishlei. It says your eyelids will be straight ahead of you. So he said what it means is as follows. Amar lo Rabbi Yabo said it means Elu divrei Torah dichsiv behu hatayif einecha bo ve'einenu. It's referring to words of Torah about which it says also in Mishlei. Much later it says hatayif einecha bo ve'einenu. If you cover your eyes from it, you wrap your eyes from it, then it's gone. Meaning, as soon as you look away from Torah, you just stop reviewing it, you're going to lose it. But even still, they were straight for Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir would not forget them. Either because he reviewed or because he was exceptionally brilliant. But because of that, because we could say about him that even though even though you kind of turn away your eyelids, but still yashir negdacha, you still have you still have it in front of you. So that's Rabbi Meir, so he could write it by heart. Rav Chisda found Rav Chanana that he was writing svarim, holy books, without copying them off another work. Amar le, so he said to him, Ru'uya kol haTorah kula l'chkasev al picha. So he said very nicely to him, Rav Chisda said to Rav Chanana, really, you're fitting to that Divrei Torah could be written by you by heart. Ella, but the Chachamim said, Asr lichtov osacha shalom aksav, that you're not allowed to write any letter from without copying it over. So he said it very nicely. He said, you're really fitting to write by heart, but what are we supposed to do? The Chachamim said you can't write it by heart. Now, but from the fact that he said it this way, he said the whole Torah could have been written by you by heart. So you see that he had that same quality as Rabbi Meir, that Yashiru Negdecha, they were straight for him. So Rabbi Meir wrote because he knew it so well. So why couldn't Rav Chanana write? What was Rav Chisda's problem that Rav Chanana was writing by heart? If Rav Chisda could say about him, really it's fitting for the entire Torah to be written by you by heart, so that means he knows it. So if he knows it, he's like Rabbi Meir. So why can't he write it by heart like Rabbi Meir did? Answer the Gemara, Shas Adachak Shani. Now Rabbi Meir was an exception. It was a Shas Adachak. It was extreme circumstances. He was traveling. He was in this place, and they didn't have a Megillah. So what's he supposed to do? He doesn't have a Megillah to copy over from. That's the whole problem. So there, because he knew it so well, it was okay for him to write it. But if there's manuscripts available to copy from, one should not write it by heart, even if they know it really well. Now, despite that though, Abaye shara ledebei bar Chava lemichtav tefillin mezuzah shaloming aksav. Abaye allowed the people from the house of Bar Chava to write tefillin and mezuzahs, the scrolls of tefillin and mezuzahs, by heart. Kiman, who's that going like? The Tanya, it's like the following Tana that we're learning a Brisa. Rabbi Yirmiyah Omer Mishum Rabbeinu, tefillin and mezuzahs nechtavos shaloming aksav. That tefillin and mezuzahs don't have to be copied over. Vein trichos sirtut. And they also don't need sirtut. They don't need you to scratch in the line to guide your writing. The Hilchasan, why is that? Halacha tefillin ein trichon sirtut. That tefillin does not need sirtut, does not need the line scratching, but mezuzahs trichon sirtut, but mezuzahs do. But idi v'idi nechtavo shaloming aksav. But either one can be written by heart. They don't need to be copied over. Ask the Gemara, my time. What's the reason? Because migras krisin, because they're known to people. People know the parshas of tefillin and mezuzah by heart. Certainly mezuzah, it's Shema and V'hayayim Shema. Even tefillin, those two we know by heart. The other two maybe not as well. The Gemara says no. The Sofrim know it by heart. The Sofrim know it by heart. They know it so well that they do not need to copy it over, and therefore these are exceptions to the general rule. The general rule is that when you write holy works, Sifrei Kodesh, you have to copy them over from other manuscripts. But when it comes to tefillin and mezuzah, since we know it so well, the Sofrim, the scribes know it so well, they do not need to copy it over, and they can write it by heart if they wish. Okay, we'll hold here.